What if I told you that the person sitting next to you on the bus, smiling politely, could be carrying invisible wounds so deep they've reshaped their entire nervous system? What if the colleague who never complains has learned to swallow screams? What if your own quiet strength isn't strength at all, but a survival mechanism you've mistaken for virtue? Have you ever wondered why some people seem to carry an invisible weight, a gravity that draws others in without explanation? Carl Jung believed that our deepest wounds don't just hurt us, they transform us into entirely different beings. But here's the controversy. Is recognizing these signs helpful, or does it risk turning trauma into an identity? Some psychologists argue that focusing on suffering signs can trap people in victim narratives. Others insist that awareness is the first step to freedom. Today, we're exploring 13 signs that reveal someone has endured profound suffering. Signs so subtle that even the person carrying them might not recognize their own transformation. But first, let me ask you this. Are you ready to see yourself clearly, even if what you discover challenges everything you thought you knew about your own strength? They call you the strong one. But what if your strength is actually your prison? You've become the person others lean on, but you've forgotten how to lean on anyone else. You handle everything alone, not because you prefer it, but because depending on others feels dangerous. When was the last time you asked for help without immediately feeling like a burden? Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole. But what happens when whole becomes isolated? When self-reliance transforms into self-exile? Some argue that hyperindependence is simply mature self-sufficiency. Society celebrates self-reliant individuals. Why pathologize what could be strength? Perhaps the issue isn't your independence. It's a world that demands interdependence without teaching us how to trust safely. Hyperindependence born from trauma isn't choice. It's conditioned survival. You learned that needing others meant risking abandonment, betrayal, or disappointment. So you built a fortress, not realizing that fortresses keep others out as much as they keep you safe inside. What would happen if you let someone else hold the weight for just one day? What are you truly afraid would collapse? You don't just feel for others, you feel them, and it's slowly killing who you used to be. You walk into rooms and immediately sense the emotional temperature. You absorb others' pain like a sponge, often before they've even spoken it. You've become an emotional translator for everyone around you. When did feeling others' emotions become more familiar than feeling your own? Jung wrote about projection, how we see in others what we won't face in ourselves. But what about absorption? What happens when empathy becomes your identity, and helping others becomes your only way of feeling valuable? Critics might say, empathy is a gift. The world needs more empathetic people. They're not wrong. Empathy builds connections, heals communities, and creates compassion. So why frame it as a problem? Healthy empathy has boundaries. Trauma-born empathy is boundaryless. It's a survival radar that never switches off. You learn to read others' emotions to predict safety or danger. Now, as an adult, you're still scanning, still absorbing, still trying to fix others to avoid fixing yourself. If you stopped being useful to others tomorrow, would you know who you are? What would be left of your identity if you couldn't heal, help, or hold space for anyone else? You crave intimacy but flinch when it arrives. You want to be seen but panic when someone actually looks. Every text message gets analyzed. Every silence becomes evidence. Every act of kindness triggers suspicion instead of gratitude. Love doesn't feel safe, it feels like a setup for inevitable pain. What if your fear of love is more dangerous than love itself? Jung taught that the unconscious drives our behavior until we make it conscious. Your nervous system remembers betrayal, abandonment, conditional love. It's trying to protect you from past pain by sabotaging present possibilities. Self-protection advocates argue, trust should be earned. Being cautious in love is wisdom, not trauma. They have a point. Shouldn't past experience inform future choices? Isn't some wariness actually intelligence? There's a difference between healthy discernment and trauma-informed hypervigilance. Healthy caution evaluates new people based on their actions. Trauma-based fear assumes all new people will repeat old patterns. You're not protecting yourself from real danger, you're protecting yourself from imagined repetitions. How many potentially beautiful connections have you ended before they began? What if your protection mechanism is protecting you from the very thing that could heal you? People admire your resilience, never realizing that what they call strength is actually a cry for help disguised as competence. You're so strong, they say. I don't know how you do it. But you hate that word, strong, because they don't know that strength is just another word for suffering silently. They don't see the nights you break down in your car, the moments you scream into pillows, the weight of pretending everything is fine when everything isn't. What if your strength isn't your greatest asset but your heaviest burden? Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear for the world. But what happens when the mask becomes your face? When the performance becomes your prison? Society needs strong people. Resilience is celebrated because it's valuable. Some argue that learning to carry weight builds character, creates leaders, and develops capability. Why should we question strength? Authentic strength chooses when to be strong and when to be vulnerable. Trauma-based strength has no off switch. It's not strength, it's a stress response frozen in time. You don't get to choose when to be strong because you learned that letting your guard down wasn't safe. If you stopped being strong for everyone else, what would you need for yourself? What kind of support have you been giving others that you've never allowed yourself to receive? Your meltdowns are invisible masterpieces, perfectly timed for when no one is watching. Your breakdown schedule is precise. In your car after work, in the shower where tears mix with water, in the quiet hours when the world sleeps. You've mastered the art of falling apart silently and rebuilding yourself by morning. What would happen if you let someone witness your unraveling? This isn't just about privacy, it's about safety. You learned that emotional expression was dangerous, inconvenient, or burdensome. So you compartmentalized your pain, scheduling it like any other necessary but private function. Some say, private emotional processing shows maturity. Not everything needs to be shared. There's wisdom in this. Boundaries around emotions can be healthy. Not all pain needs an audience. There's a difference between choosing privacy and being terrified of visibility. Healthy people can cry with others when needed. You've lost the option of support because vulnerability feels like exposure, and exposure feels like danger. Who in your life has earned the right to see you completely broken? And if the answer is no one, what does that say about the connections you've built? You don't just enter rooms, you read them. Energy, tension, hidden emotions. You catch what others never notice. You see the sadness behind laughter, the fear behind confidence, the loneliness in crowded spaces. It's like having emotional X-ray vision, except you can't turn it off, and sometimes you wish you couldn't see so clearly. Is seeing everything a gift or a curse? This hyper-awareness wasn't born from natural intuition. It developed as a survival skill. Children in chaotic or dangerous environments learn to read micro-expressions, voice tones, and energy shifts to predict what's coming next. Intuitive people argue this is a spiritual gift. Empaths and highly sensitive persons are celebrated in many circles. This awareness helps people, heals communities, and creates deeper connections. Why frame it as trauma? Gifts can have traumatic origins without diminishing their value. Your sensitivity is real and valuable, but it becomes exhausting when you can't filter it. You're not just noticing others' emotions, you're constantly scanning for threats that might not exist. What would it feel like to walk into a room and just be present without immediately assessing everyone's emotional state? Can you imagine the relief of not being responsible for reading and managing everyone else's inner world? When you finally love someone, you don't just love them. You study them, protect them, anticipate their needs, and prepare for their departure. Your love is intense because it's rare. You don't trust easily, but when you do, you invest everything. Unfortunately, you also brace for impact, expecting the beautiful thing to end. How do you love someone while simultaneously preparing to lose them? Jung taught about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress. Your shadow holds all the times love meant pain, all the moments care led to abandonment. You love through your shadow, with one foot always near the exit. Protective love advocates say, this is wisdom. You're learning from past mistakes. They argue that cautious love is mature love, that protecting yourself while loving is healthy self-preservation. Love with an exit strategy isn't fully love. It's a controlled experiment. You're not protecting your heart. You're denying it the full experience of connection. The very protection that keeps you safe also keeps you lonely. What would love look like if you trusted it to stay? How would you love differently if you believed you were worth keeping? Your quiet isn't empty. It's full of everything you learned not to say. You've mastered the art of meaningful silence. Others fill space with words, but you've learned that silence can hold truth, pain, love, and wisdom all at once. Your quiet presence changes rooms. What stories live in your silence that the world has never heard? Trauma often steals voice. Children in unsafe environments learn that speaking up brings consequences. Adults carrying that conditioning struggle to believe their words matter. Their opinions are valid. Their needs are worth expressing. Minimalists and philosophers celebrate the power of silence. It's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. Some argue that thoughtful silence is wisdom, not trauma. Chosen silence is powerful. Imposed silence is imprisonment. You're not choosing to be quiet because you have nothing to say. You're quiet because you learned that saying too much was dangerous. Your silence protects others from your truth and you from their judgment. What would you say if you knew your words couldn't hurt you? What truths are you carrying that the world needs to hear? A quiet morning with coffee feels like a miracle. Sunset through your window becomes a sacred experience. You've learned to find profound beauty in ordinary moments. You don't just appreciate peace, you worship it. Because you know what chaos feels like. Stillness becomes holy. You collect moments of calm like precious stones. Why do people who've suffered often see beauty that others miss? Jung wrote about compensation, how the psyche balances extremes. Perhaps your appreciation for peace is directly proportional to the chaos you've endured. Your gratitude is earned, not given. Gratitude gurus say everyone should appreciate small moments. Mindfulness is for everyone, but critics argue this romanticizes trauma. Should people have to suffer to appreciate beauty? You don't appreciate peace because you're more grateful than others. You appreciate it because you know how rare it is. Your nervous system recognizes safety as precious because it remembers when safety wasn't guaranteed. What if peace became your default instead of your treasure? What would life look like if calm was normal, not sacred? You can hold space for anyone's breakdown, but your own emotions feel impossible to manage. Friends call you when they're falling apart because you know exactly what to say, how to listen, how to hold their pain without trying to fix it immediately. But when you're the one suffering, you have no idea how to extend that same compassion to yourself. Why are you kinder to others than you are to yourself? This isn't just about self-esteem, it's about safety. Supporting others feels purposeful and controllable. Facing your own pain feels overwhelming and dangerous. You learn to be useful to avoid being useless, valuable to avoid being discarded. Service-oriented philosophies celebrate selflessness. It's better to give than receive. Religious and spiritual traditions often praise those who put others first. Isn't self-sacrifice noble? True service comes from overflow, not emptiness. You're not serving others from love, you're serving them from need. The need to be needed, to be valuable, to earn your place in people's lives through utility rather than simply existing. What would happen if you treated yourself with the same compassion you show others? What if your worth wasn't tied to how much you could hold for other people? Good moments make you nervous because you've learned that happiness has an expiration date. When life is going well, you don't relax, you prepare. You scan for problems, create backup plans, and maintain emotional distance from joy because you know it won't last. Hope feels dangerous because disappointment is inevitable. What if your preparation for disaster is actually creating it? This hypervigilance served you once. In unpredictable environments, scanning for threats keeps you safe. But now you're scanning for threats in safety, preparing for storms in clear weather. Pessimistic realists argue this is practical wisdom. Expect the worst, hope for the best. They say optimists are naive, that preparing for problems is intelligent planning, not trauma. There's a difference between reasonable preparation and anticipatory grief. You're not planning for potential problems, you're mourning good things before they're gone. This robs you of present joy while failing to actually protect you from future pain. How much of your life have you spent preparing for disasters that never came? What experiences have you missed while bracing for impact? Broken people find you like you're magnetic. You don't seek them out, but they seek you out, drawn to something they recognize in your energy. You become the confidant, the safe space, the person others trust with their deepest pain. It's not conscious. There's just something about you that says, I understand without words. Are you attracting wounded people, or are you only seeing wounds because that's what you know how to recognize? Jung believed wounded healers are essential, those who heal because they understand suffering intimately. But there's a shadow side. Are you collecting wounded people to avoid your own healing? Some argue this is a beautiful gift. You're called to help others. Spiritual communities often celebrate those who serve as emotional healers and safe spaces for the broken. You attract wounded people because you speak their language, the language of pain, caution, and hyper-awareness. But surrounding yourself with constant crisis can become a way to avoid addressing your own needs. You help others heal while neglecting your own healing. What would your social circle look like if you were attracted to people's joy instead of their pain? Who would you surround yourself with if you weren't always trying to save or fix someone? The hook. You don't celebrate recovery milestones because your healing doesn't look like anyone else's. Your progress is measured in private victories no one sees. You didn't have a dramatic breakthrough moment. Instead, you had 1,000 small choices to stay soft in a hard world, to choose trust despite evidence for fear, to keep your heart open despite repeated reasons to close it. What if the most profound transformations are the ones nobody notices? Your healing isn't cinematic. It's the decision to answer the phone when someone calls instead of letting it go to voicemail. It's crying in front of another person. It's saying, I need help without apologizing for needing it. Recovery culture often celebrates dramatic transformations and public healing journeys. Social media rewards visible progress. Some argue that private healing lacks accountability and community support. Real healing happens in the quiet moments when no one is watching. It's not about proving your progress to others. It's about returning to yourself, slowly and gently. Your healing doesn't need witnesses to be valid. If no one ever recognized your growth, would you still know how far you've come? Can you celebrate your invisible victories? The big question. Now that you recognize these signs, what will you do with this awareness? Jung believed that consciousness is choice. You can remain identified with your survival patterns, or you can begin the sacred work of individuation, becoming who you truly are beneath the adaptations. Some argue that identifying these signs creates victim identities and keeps people stuck in trauma narratives. Others insist that recognition is the first step toward freedom. Both are partially true. Recognition without integration becomes identification. But integration without recognition is impossible. The goal isn't to transcend your suffering, but to transform it into wisdom. The path forward. Acknowledge without shame, understand without judgment, choose without force, transform without losing the gifts your suffering gave you. The ultimate question. If your suffering was the fire that forged your soul, what will you create with the strength it gave you? Your pain didn't make you less. It made you real. And in a world of performance and pretending, being real is the rarest gift of all. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Your suffering didn't disqualify you from that privilege. It initiated you into it. The question isn't whether you've suffered deeply. The question is whether you'll let that suffering transform you into someone capable of healing not just yourself, but everyone whose life you touch. You are not your trauma, but your trauma has made you more you than anything else ever could. And that person, scarred, sensitive, strong, and searingly real, is exactly who the world needs you to be. The signs don't define you. They reveal you. And what they reveal is sacred. What will you do with this recognition? The choice, as always, is yours.